The storm hit New Terra hard that night. Rain pounded against Jake Morrison's small farmhouse windows like angry fists. He sat in his kitchen, drinking coffee and reading reports about the hydroponic farms he managed for the colony. The wind howled outside, making the walls creak and groan. Jake was used to storms. He was used to being alone, too. 3 years had passed since Maria died in the mining accident. 3 years of quiet evenings, empty beds, and conversations with no one but himself. He liked it that way now. It was easier than remembering what he had lost. The knock on his door came just after midnight. At first, Jake thought it was just the wind throwing debris against his house. Then it came again. 3 soft knocks, barely audible over the storm. Jake frowned and looked toward the door. Nobody visited this late, especially not during weather like this. He opened the door and stepped back in shock. A tall figure stood on his porch, hunched over and shaking. It was clearly not human. The being had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the porch light. Crystalline formations grew along its arms and forehead like natural armor. It was a female, he could tell, and she was holding 2 small children against her body. "Please," the alien woman said in broken human language. Her voice was soft and musical, even through her obvious pain. "My children, they need father. Please help." Jake stared at her for several seconds. He had seen pictures of different alien species during his military training, but he had never met one in person. The human colony on New Terra had strict rules about contact with aliens. All meetings were supposed to go through official channels. The woman swayed on her feet and nearly fell. One of the children, a small boy, looked up at Jake with large, frightened eyes. The other child, even smaller, was barely conscious in her mother's arms. "Ma'am, you need medical attention," Jake said, stepping forward to steady her. "Let me call the colony medical center." "No," she said urgently, gripping his arm with surprising strength. "No officials. Please, they will separate us. My children need father. I sense you have strong heart." Jake looked into her eyes. They were unlike any he had ever seen, shifting between blue and silver like water in moonlight. He could see desperation there, and something else. Hope, maybe, or just exhaustion. The practical part of his mind told him to call Captain Brooks immediately. The colony had procedures for this kind of thing. But the children were so small and frightened. The woman was clearly hurt and desperate. In the storm, they would not survive long outside. "Come inside," Jake said, making his decision. "We'll figure this out." He helped the alien woman into his living room and settled her on his couch. The children stayed close to their mother, watching Jake with wide, fearful eyes. Now that they were in better light, Jake could see that all 3 of them had the same crystalline features and pale blue skin. The children were clearly very young. "What's your name?" Jake asked the woman as he brought her a blanket and some water. "I am Lyra," she said, wrapping the blanket around herself and her children. "This is my son Kyle and my daughter Nira. We are Zephyrian people." Jake nodded. He had heard of Zephyrians before. They were supposed to be peaceful, with some kind of natural ability to sense emotions. "I'm Jake Morrison, you're hurt. Let me get my medical kit." While Jake cleaned and bandaged a deep cut on Lyra's arm, she told him bits of her story. Her words came slowly, mixed with tears and pauses as she searched for the right human terms. Her mate had been killed 3 weeks ago when raiders attacked their settlement. She had taken her children and run, traveling across dangerous territory to reach the human colony. "Why here?" Jake asked. "Why my door?" Lyra looked at him with those strange, shifting eyes. "I feel heart patterns, emotions. Your heart, it knows loss, but it is still strong, still caring. My children need someone with strong heart to be father figure. In our culture, without father protection, children become very sick in mind." Jake felt uncomfortable with her words. He was not father material. He was just a man who grew vegetables and tried not to think too much about the past. "I'm not sure I understand. You want me to be their father?" "Not birth father," Lyra said quickly. "Protection father, emotional anchor. Without this, Zephyrian children cannot develop properly. They need stable male presence to feel safe." The little boy Cale had been listening to the conversation. He looked up at Jake and said something in his own language. Lyra translated. He asks if you are warrior. I told him yes, you have warrior heart. Jake almost smiled. I was a soldier once, Marine, but now I just grow food for the colony. Growing food is important work, Lyra said. Life work. Good work for father. As the night wore on, Jake learned more about their situation. The raiders who killed Lyra's mate were part of a larger group that hunted empathic species like Zephyrians. They captured them and sold them as slaves to other worlds. Lyra's family was not the first to be targeted, and they would not be the last. These raiders, they will follow you here? Jake asked. Maybe, Lyra admitted, but I hope human colony is too strong for them to attack. Jake was not so sure about that. New Terra was a farming colony, not a military base. They had some security, but nothing that could handle serious trouble. Still, looking at the exhausted woman and her frightened children, Jake knew he could not turn them away. By morning, the storm had passed. Lyra and her children were asleep on Jake's couch and floor, curled together like small animals seeking warmth. Jake sat in his kitchen, drinking coffee and trying to figure out what to do next. He knew he should call Captain Brooks and report the aliens. That was protocol. But something about Lyra's words stuck with him. The way she had looked at him and said he had a strong heart. The way little Cale had asked if he was a warrior. Jake had not felt like a warrior in a long time. He had not felt like much of anything except tired and alone. But sitting there, watching over 3 sleeping refugees who had nowhere else to go, he felt something he had not experienced in years. He felt needed. The sun came up bright and clear, washing away all traces of the storm. Jake made breakfast for his unexpected guests and tried to figure out how to explain this situation to the colony authorities. Whatever happened next, he knew his quiet life was about to become much more complicated. But for the first time in 3 years, Jake Morrison did not mind the idea of complication. Jake woke up the next morning to find Cale standing beside his bed, staring at him with those large silver eyes. The boy had not made a sound, but somehow Jake sensed his presence. It was strange and a little unsettling. Is everything okay? Jake asked, sitting up slowly so he would not frighten the child. Cale said something in Zephyrian and pointed toward the living room. Jake followed him out to find Lyra awake, sitting with little Nira on her lap. Both children looked better after a night of rest, but they still stayed very close to their mother. Good morning, Jake said. How are you feeling? Better, thank you, Lyra replied. Her English was clearer today, though she still spoke slowly. You have been very kind to us, but I know this creates problems for you. Jake was making breakfast when his communication device buzzed. The caller was Captain Helen Brooks, the colony administrator. Jake had been expecting this call. Morrison, we need to talk, Captain Brooks said without greeting. My sensors picked up an unauthorized alien craft landing near your sector last night. Do you know anything about this? Jake looked at Lyra, who was watching him carefully. Yes, ma'am. I have 3 Zephyrian refugees here, a woman and 2 children. They needed emergency shelter during the storm. There was a long pause. You know the protocols, Jake. All alien contact goes through official channels first. I'm sending a team to collect them for processing. Captain, they're not dangerous, Jake said quickly. The woman is injured and the children are scared. Can we at least wait until they're recovered? Absolutely not. We have procedures for a reason. The team will be there in an hour. The communication ended. Jake turned to find Lyra standing behind him, her face pale with worry. They come for us now? She asked. The colony administrator wants to move you to a processing center. It's standard procedure for refugees. Lyra's eyes filled with fear. They will separate us. Put children in different place from mother. This will damage their minds badly. I won't let that happen, Jake said, though he was not sure how he could prevent it. When Captain Brooks arrived with 2 security officers, Jake met them at the door. Helen Brooks was a tough woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had run the colony efficiently for 10 years. Where are they? she asked. In the living room. Captain, I need to explain something about their situation. There's nothing to explain. Colony regulations are clear. Unauthorized aliens get processed at the security facility until we can determine if they're safe. Jake blocked the doorway. They're not criminals, Helen. They're refugees running from slavers. That's what they told you. We need to verify their story through proper channels. Look at them, Jake said, stepping aside. Do they look like a threat to you? Captain Brooks entered the living room and saw Lyra holding her children. Even she had to admit they did not look dangerous. The woman was clearly exhausted and the children were obviously terrified. Ma'am, Captain Brooks addressed Lyra. I'm Captain Brooks, administrator of this colony. We need to move you and your children to our security facility for processing. Please, Lyra said, standing up slowly. Do not separate us from protective mail. My children need father figure or they become very sick. I don't understand what you mean, Captain Brooks said. Jake stepped forward. In Zephyrian culture, children need a stable male presence for proper emotional development. It's not about biology. It's about psychological security. That's not our problem, Captain Brooks replied. We have procedures to follow. Give me 1 week, Jake said suddenly. Let them stay here for 1 week, while I learn more about their situation. If they prove to be any kind of threat, I'll personally deliver them to your facility. Captain Brooks studied Jake's face. She had known him for 3 years, ever since he arrived on New Terra. He was reliable, honest, and never asked for special treatment. This is highly irregular, she said finally. But I'll give you 3 days. After that, they go to processing whether you like it or not. After the officials left, Jake found himself alone with 3 aliens who were now his responsibility. The weight of it felt strange but not unwelcome. It had been a long time since anyone depended on him for anything important. Over the next few days, Jake began to understand more about Zephyrian culture. Lyra explained that her people were naturally empathic, able to sense emotions and intentions. This made them valuable to slavers who used them to control other captive species. Your heart pattern is very clear, Lyra told him one evening as they sat in his garden. You carry sadness but also strength. My children can feel this stability, it makes them calm. Jake watched Kale and Nira playing among his vegetable plants. They were still shy around him, but they no longer hid behind their mother when he entered a room. How do I know if I'm doing this right? Jake asked. I've never been a father before. Being father is not about knowing everything, Lyra said. It is about being present, being steady. You show them that world can be a safe place. That night, Jake taught Kale how to check the water levels in the hydroponic systems. The boy was eager to learn and had steady hands for the delicate work. Nira was too young for technical tasks, but she liked helping Jake plant seeds in the greenhouse. In our old home, Kale told Jake in careful English, I help father fix machines too. But raiders broke everything. Jake put his hand on the boy's shoulder. I'm sorry about your father. Mother says you are protection father now. Different kind, but still father. The words hit Jake harder than he expected. He had not planned to become anyone's father, even temporarily, but looking at Kale's hopeful face, Jake realized that maybe this was exactly what he needed without knowing it. On the 3rd day, Captain Brooks returned as promised. But this time she came alone and without security officers. I've been doing research on Zephyrian culture, she said to Jake. Their claims about needing male protection figures appear to be legitimate. Several academic sources confirm it. So they can stay? Jake asked. For now. But Jake, you need to understand what you're taking on. If word gets out that we're harboring Zephyrian refugees, it could bring trouble to the entire colony. Jake looked through his window at Lyra and her children in the garden. Nira was showing her mother a flower she had picked, while Kale carefully watered a row of tomato plants. I understand, Jake said. But they need our help. And honestly, Captain, I think I need them too. Captain Brooks studied his face and nodded, slowly. All right, but we do this officially. I'll register them as temporary colony residents under your sponsorship. That gives us legal cover if anyone asks questions. That evening, Jake told Lyra and the children that they could stay. For the first time since they arrived, Lyra smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look years younger. "Thank you," she said. "You give us hope when we had none left." "We're going to figure this out together," Jake promised. And for the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 2 weeks passed quietly on Jake's farm. The Zephyrian family settled into a routine that surprised everyone with how natural it felt. Kale helped Jake with the morning equipment checks, while Nira spent her time in the greenhouse talking to the plants in a mixture of Zephyrian and broken English. Jake discovered that Zephyrian children learned differently than humans. They picked up emotions and intentions before they understood words. Kale could sense when machinery was about to malfunction by feeling the stress patterns in Jake's mind. Nira somehow knew which plants needed extra water just by touching their leaves. "Your daughter has a gift," Jake told Lyra one morning as they watched Nira carefully tend to a sick tomato plant. "All Zephyrian children connect with living things," Lyra explained. "But Nira is special. She feels life force very strongly." Jake was learning to appreciate these differences. At first, having empathic people around made him uncomfortable. They could sense his old pain and loneliness. But gradually, he realized they did not judge him for these feelings. If anything, they seemed to understand that sadness was just part of his heart pattern, like scars were part of his body. The problem started when other colonists began to notice the aliens living at Jake's farm. New Terra was a small community where everyone knew everyone else's business. Word spread quickly that Jake Morrison was harboring 3 Zephyrians without proper authorization. The first complaint came from Pete Johnson, who ran the colony's supply depot. He showed up at Jake's door one evening, clearly agitated. "Jake, what the hell are you thinking?" Pete demanded. "These aliens could be spies or worse. They could be mapping our defenses for an invasion. They're refugees, Pete. A mother and 2 small children. That's what they want you to think. These empathic types are dangerous. They can mess with your mind, make you think things that aren't true." Jake looked over at Kale, who was sitting nearby reading a book about hydroponic farming. The boy's face had gone very still, and Jake could sense his distress even without empathic abilities. "Pete, you're scaring the children," Jake said, quietly. "And you're talking nonsense. They've been here 2 weeks without causing any problems." "Problems you know about," Pete replied. "Captain Brooks should have sent them away immediately. This sets a dangerous precedent." After Pete left, Jake found Kale sitting alone in the greenhouse. The boy was trying not to cry, but tears were running down his blue cheeks. "Hey," Jake said, sitting down beside him. "Don't let Pete's words hurt you. He's just afraid of things he doesn't understand." "He thinks we are bad," Kale said in his careful English. "He thinks we trick you with mind powers." "Do you think you're tricking me?" Jake asked. Kale shook his head firmly. "No. We just want to be safe. We want family." "Then that's all that matters. Some people fear what they don't know, but that doesn't make their fear right." Jake's words seemed to comfort Kale, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. Fear had a way of spreading through small communities like disease. The next challenge came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, requested a meeting with Jake and Lyra. Unlike Pete Johnson, she was not hostile, but she had serious concerns. "I need to understand the biological compatibility issues," Dr. Martinez explained as they sat in Jake's kitchen. "If you're going to serve as a psychological anchor for these children, I need to know if there are any health risks." "What kind of risks?" Lyra asked. "Empathic species sometimes form neural connections with their host families. I need to know if this could affect Jake's mental health or decision-making abilities." Jake felt a flash of annoyance. "Nobody's controlling my mind, Lisa. I'm making my own choices." "That's exactly what someone under empathic influence would say," Dr. Martinez replied. "I'm not accusing anyone of anything deliberate, but I need to run some tests." The tests were extensive and uncomfortable. Dr. Martinez ran brain scans on. Jake took blood samples from all of them and asked dozens of questions about their daily interactions. Throughout it all, Jake could see how much the process upset Lyra and the children. "This is like the processing centers," Lyra whispered to Jake while they waited for test results. "They study us like specimens." 3 days later, Dr. Martinez called with her findings. "Good news," she said. "There's no evidence of any kind of neural manipulation. Jake's brain patterns are completely normal for a human male his age." "So we can stop worrying about mind control?" Jake asked. "Yes, but I did find something interesting. Jake, your stress hormone levels have dropped significantly since the Zephyrians arrived. Your sleep patterns have improved, and you show signs of decreased depression." Jake was quiet for a moment. "What does that mean?" "It means they're good for you, Jake. Whatever psychological effect they're having, it's positive." That evening, Jake shared the news with his adopted family. Lyra smiled, but she also looked worried. "The doctor's tests will not stop the fear," she said. "Some humans will always see us as threat." She was right. Over the following days, Jake noticed changes in how some colonists treated him. A few people crossed the street to avoid him when he walked through town. Others whispered when they saw him coming and stopped talking when he got close. But not everyone reacted with fear. Tom Wilson, who managed the colony's power systems, stopped by to meet the family. He brought toys for the children and stayed for dinner. "My grandfather always said you judge people by their actions, not their appearances," Tom told Jake. "These folks have been nothing but polite and helpful since they got here." Mary Foster, the colony's teacher, was even more direct. "Those children need education," she told Jake. "I don't care what species they are. Learning is a universal right." Gradually, the colony began to split into 2 groups. One side feared the aliens and wanted them removed. The other side saw them as refugees who deserved protection. Jake found himself at the center of a debate he never wanted to join. The tension came to a head during a colony council meeting. Captain Brooks had called the meeting to address the alien situation once and for all. Jake attended with Lyra, while Kale and Nira stayed home with Mary Foster. "The question before us is simple," Captain Brooks began. "Do we allow the Zephyrian family to remain as permanent residents? Or do we relocate them to an official refugee processing center?" Pete Johnson spoke first, arguing that the aliens posed a security risk. "We don't know who else might be tracking them. We could be putting the entire colony in danger." Then Tom Wilson stood up. "I've worked alongside these folks for 2 weeks now. The boy has better technical instincts than most adult humans I know. The girl has a natural understanding of plant biology that could help our agricultural output." The debate continued for over an hour. In the end, Captain Brooks called for a vote. The result was close. 15 votes to allow the family to stay, 12 votes to relocate them. "The Zephyrians may remain," Captain Brooks announced. "But this decision comes with conditions. Jake Morrison takes full responsibility for their conduct and integration into our community." Walking home under the stars, Lyra was quiet. Finally, she spoke. "In Zephyrian culture, family bonds are felt through empathy," she said. "But humans create family through choice and commitment. I think maybe the human way is stronger." "Why do you say that?" Jake asked. "Because empathic bonds happen, naturally, but choosing to love someone, choosing to protect them when you don't have to, that takes real strength of heart." Jake thought about her words as they reached his farmhouse. Inside, they found Kale and Nira asleep on the couch, curled up together, like puppies. Mary Foster was reading nearby. "How did it go?" Mary asked. "We get to stay," Jake said simply. As he carried Nira to her bed and helped Kale to his room, Jake realized that Lyra was right. The human way of creating family through choice and commitment was different from the Zephyrian way, but maybe that made it more meaningful, not less. For the first time in years, Jake Morrison felt like he was part of something bigger than himself, and he had chosen it freely. The warning came at dawn on a Tuesday morning. Captain Brooks's voice crackled through Jake's communication device, tense and urgent. "Morrison, get to the command center immediately. We have 3 unidentified ships approaching the colony. They're demanding we surrender the Zephyrian refugees. Jake felt ice form in his stomach. He looked over at Lyra, who had gone completely still at the kitchen table. Even without empathic abilities, he could see the terror in her eyes. "The raiders," she whispered. "They found us." Jake grabbed his old military gear from the closet where it had sat unused for 3 years. His Marine combat uniform still fit, though it felt strange after so long. As he strapped on his equipment belt, Kale and Nira appeared in the doorway. "Are the bad people here?" Nira asked in her small voice. "I won't let them hurt you," Jake promised, kneeling down to look both children in the eyes. "Do you remember the hiding place I showed you in the basement?" Kyle nodded seriously. "Behind the water tanks." "Good. Take your sister there and don't come out until your mother or I come for you." At the command center, Jake found chaos. Captain Brooks was trying to coordinate with the other colony administrators while monitoring the approaching ships. The vessels were sleek and dark, clearly built for speed and intimidation. "What do they want exactly?" Jake asked. "The lead ship sent a message," Captain Brooks replied, playing back a recording. The voice was harsh and mechanical, speaking human standard with a thick accent. "Human colony New Terra. We track escaped Zephyrian slaves to your location. Surrender the female Lyra and her offspring immediately, or we will take them by force." Jake's jaw tightened. "Slaves, they're calling them slaves." "Jake, we need to consider our options here," Captain Brooks said carefully. "We have 300 people in this colony. These ships are armed military vessels. Are you suggesting we hand them over?" "I'm suggesting we think about what's best. For everyone. 3 lives against 300? No." Jake's voice was flat and hard. "We don't negotiate with slavers. We don't hand over refugees. And we sure as hell don't abandon people under our protection." Tom Wilson spoke up from across the room. "Jake's right. The moment we give in to these bastards, we lose everything we've built here. Our integrity, our values, our safety. They'll know they can push us around." Dr. Martinez joined the debate. "But what can we do against military ships? We're farmers and engineers, not soldiers." Jake studied the tactical display showing the colony's layout. New Terra had been built for agriculture and research, not defense, but it had some advantages that military planners might overlook. "We have the mining tunnels," Jake said, pointing to the underground network that connected major buildings. "We have industrial equipment that can be weaponized, and we have something these raiders don't expect." "Which is?" Captain Brooks asked. "We have people who choose to fight for each other instead of just following orders for profit." The raiders gave the colony 2 hours to surrender the Zephyrians. Jake used that time to organize a defense that would have made his old drill sergeants proud. He positioned colonists with hunting rifles at key points around the settlement. The mining equipment was moved to create barriers and improvised weapons. Mary Foster turned her school into a medical station. Pete Johnson, despite his earlier fears about the aliens, volunteered to help defend the supply depot. Even Dr. Martinez grabbed a weapon and took position at the clinic. Lyra insisted on helping despite Jake's protests. "I can sense their emotions and intentions," she explained. "I know when they plan to attack and where they will focus their efforts." "It's too dangerous," Jake argued. "My children are here. My new family is here. I will not hide while others fight for us." The attack came, exactly when Lyra predicted it would. 3 shuttles launched from the raider ships, heading for different parts of the colony. Jake coordinated the defense from the command center, while Lyra used her empathic abilities to track the raiders' movements. "They're coming in fast from the north," she reported. "I feel anger and excitement. They expect easy victory." Jake spoke into his communicator. "All units, remember the plan. Let them land, then hit them in the tunnels where their superior firepower won't help them." The first shuttle touched down near the hydroponics facility. 8 heavily armed raiders emerged, scanning for threats with advanced sensors. They moved with the confidence of predators who had done this many times before. They walked straight into Jake's trap. Hidden charges detonated under their feet, destroying their shuttle and disorienting the raiders. Before they could recover, colonists emerged from concealed positions and the tunnel entrances. The raiders found themselves surrounded by determined people fighting for their homes. "Surrender, and we'll let you live," Jake called out through his speaker system. The raiders responded with weapons fire. Jake had expected this. The battle was short but intense. The raiders were better armed and trained, but they were fighting on unfamiliar ground against people who knew every inch of the terrain. The second shuttle tried to land at the colony's main entrance but found the area blocked by mining equipment. When the raiders tried to blast through the barriers, they triggered more hidden explosives. Tom Wilson had rigged the entire area with charges from the mining operations. The third shuttle was the smartest. It landed away from the colony and tried to approach on foot through the agricultural fields. But Nira's special connection to living things proved useful in an unexpected way. She could sense the raiders moving through the crops and guided Jake's team to intercept them. "They're scared now," Lyra reported as the battle turned in the colonists' favor. They did not expect this level of resistance. The fight lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 2 raiders were dead, 5 were captured, and the rest had retreated to their ships. The colony had suffered some damage and 3 people were injured, but there were no deaths among the defenders. Jake stood in the command center, watching the raider ships pull back to a safer distance. He knew this was not over. "They'll call for reinforcements," he said to Captain Brooks. "Probably, but we sent a message today. New Terra doesn't roll over for bullies." The captured raiders were interrogated by Captain Brooks and Dr. Martinez. They revealed that the slaving operation was larger than anyone had imagined. Dozens of worlds were being targeted, and empathic species were especially valuable because they could be used to control other slaves. This isn't just about Lyra and her children, Jake realized. This is about a systematic campaign to destroy entire civilizations. That evening, as the colony repaired damage and counted their victories, Jake sat with his adopted family in their home. Kyle and Nira had emerged from hiding after the battle, shaken but safe. "You fought for us," Lyra said to Jake. "Your whole community fought for us. I have never seen such thing before." "That's what families do," Jake replied. "We protect each other." But even as he spoke the words, Jake knew the raiders would be back, and next time they would come prepared for serious resistance. The battle for New Terra was just beginning. Outside, the colonists were already working through the night to build better defenses. Tom Wilson was installing new sensor arrays while Mary Foster organized supply caches throughout the tunnel system. Even Pete Johnson was helping, his earlier fears replaced by determination to protect his community. Jake realized that the attack had changed something fundamental in the colony. They were no longer just individual families trying to make a living on a frontier world. They had become something stronger and more unified. They had become a people willing to fight for their values and each other. And that, Jake thought, was a very human thing to do. 3 days after the first attack, the raiders returned with reinforcements. This time, 6 ships appeared in New Terra's sky, and their message was different. Instead of demanding surrender, they simply began bombing the colony's outer settlements. Jake watched from the command center as his carefully planned defenses were tested to their limits. The colonists had used the time well, building better fortifications and weapon systems, but they were still vastly outgunned. "We can't keep this up forever," Captain Brooks said, as another explosion rocked the building. "They're going to wear us down." "That's their plan," Jake replied, studying the tactical display. "They want us exhausted and desperate, so we'll give up the Zephyrians to make it stop." Lyra sat nearby, her eyes closed in concentration as she monitored the emotional states of both the attackers and defenders. "The raiders are frustrated," she reported. "They expected us to break after the first day. Their leaders are angry about the delay." The second battle lasted 3 days. The colonists fought with determination and creativity, using every trick Jake could remember from his military training. They collapsed tunnel sections to trap raider ground teams, used agricultural equipment as improvised weapons, and coordinated their defense through Lyra's empathic monitoring. But the cost was high. The colony's power plant was damaged, several buildings were destroyed, and 8 colonists were seriously injured. Dr. Martinez worked around the clock in her makeshift medical center, treating wounds with limited supplies. On the third day, help arrived from an unexpected source. A human military patrol ship, the HMS Cardiff, responded to New Terra's distress signals. The single destroyer was no match for 6 raider vessels, but its arrival changed the tactical situation. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the HMS Cardiff," came the transmission. "We're responding to reports of pirate activity. All unidentified vessels are ordered to withdraw immediately or face military action." The raider ships pulled back, but their leader sent a final message to the colony. "This is not finished, humans. We will return when your protectors are gone. The Zephyrians belong to us." After the raiders left, Captain Rodriguez came down to the colony to assess the situation. He was a professional military officer who had dealt with pirate activities throughout the sector. "You did well," he told Jake and Captain Brooks. "Most civilian settlements would have surrendered after the first attack. But I have to tell you, this won't be the last time they come back." "What do you suggest?" Captain Brooks asked. "Relocate the refugees to a secure military facility. These slavers won't give up as long as their targets are here." Jake felt his heart sink. After everything they had been through, the solution was still to send Lyra and her children away. "There has to be another option," he said. Captain Rodriguez studied the damage reports and defense plans. "You've built impressive fortifications here, but you're still a civilian colony. You can't fight a war against organized pirates." That night, Jake sat with his family in the ruins of their home. A raider bomb had damaged half the house, though the main structure was still standing. Kale and Nira were quiet, sensing the adults' worry through their empathic abilities. "Maybe the military captain is right," Lyra said softly. "Maybe we should go to the secure facility. We have brought too much danger to your people." "No," Jake said firmly. "We don't split up families. We don't abandon people we care about." "But what choice do we have?" Lyra asked. "The raiders will keep coming. More people will be hurt." Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened since that stormy night when Lyra first appeared at his door. The answer, when it came to him, was so simple he wondered why he had not seen it before. "We don't just defend," he said finally. "We attack the problem at its source." Over the next few days, Jake worked with Captain Rodriguez to understand the full scope of the slaving operation. The information from captured raiders combined with military intelligence painted a disturbing picture. The slavers were hitting multiple worlds simultaneously, targeting empathic and telepathic species for capture and sale. They operated from hidden bases in uninhabited star systems, moving constantly to avoid detection. "The problem is finding them," Captain Rodriguez explained. "Space is big, and they're good at hiding." "What if we didn't have to find them?" Jake asked. "What if we made them come to us?" His plan was bold and dangerous. Instead of hiding the Zephyrian refugees, they would advertise their presence. New Terra would become known as a sanctuary world, a place where refugees from slaver attacks could find protection. "You're crazy," Captain Brooks said when Jake explained his idea. "That will bring every raider in the sector down on us." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "But it will also bring every refugee who needs help. And more importantly, it will bring attention from human military and other civilized governments." Lyra understood immediately. "You want to make this everyone's problem, not just ours." "Exactly. Right now, the slavers can pick off isolated settlements and refugee groups one at a time. But if we create a central sanctuary, they'll have to face organized resistance." Captain Rodriguez was skeptical, but intrigued. "It could work, but you'd need serious military support, more than one destroyer can provide." "Then we ask for it," Jake said. "We make New Terra into something bigger than a farming colony. We make it into a symbol." The transformation began immediately. Jake and Captain Brooks sent messages to human military command, other colonies, and even alien governments that had been affected by the slaving operation. The message was simple. New Terra was declaring itself a sanctuary world for refugees from slave raids. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, 3 more military ships arrived to provide protection. Tom Wilson found himself coordinating with alien engineers to build better defenses. Mary Foster started teaching refugee children from 6 different species. But the most important change was in the people themselves. The colonists, who had once been afraid of 3 Zephyrian refugees, were now welcoming families from across the galaxy. Pete Johnson, who had wanted the aliens removed, now ran a refugee assistance program. "What changed your mind?" Jake asked him one day. "Seeing them fight alongside us," Pete replied. "Seeing that little girl guide our people to safety during the battle. Fear makes you stupid sometimes, but fighting together, that makes you family." As New Terra grew into something unprecedented, Jake realized that Lyra had been right about the human way of creating family. It was not based on biology or empathic bonds. It was based on choice, commitment, and the willingness to stand together against the darkness. The sanctuary world was not just protecting refugees. It was proving that diverse species could work together, that strength came from unity rather than isolation. And at the center of it all was a former Marine who had learned to be a father by choosing to protect those who needed protection. The slavers were still out there, still threatening innocent people across the galaxy. But now they faced something they had never encountered before, a united community that refused to let fear drive their decisions. Jake Morrison looked out at the bustling sanctuary that New Terra had become, with refugee children playing alongside, human colonists and alien families building new homes next to the original settlement. This was not the quiet life he had planned after Maria's death. It was better. It was family, on a scale he had never imagined possible, and it was worth fighting for. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Terra's new community center, watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant colors. Below him, the sanctuary colony bustled with activity as dozens of species began their daily routines. Cale was now 12 years old and had grown tall and confident. He worked alongside Tom Wilson in the engineering department, his natural empathic abilities making him excellent at diagnosing equipment problems. Nira, now 8, had become the colony's unofficial plant specialist, helping both human farmers and alien refugees adapt their crops to New Terra's soil. "The morning meditation circle is starting," Lyra said, joining Jake on the deck. She had been appointed as the colony's cultural liaison, helping different species understand each other's customs and needs. Jake watched as a mixed group of humans and aliens gathered in the garden below. Mary Foster led them through breathing exercises that combined techniques from 6 different worlds. It was one of many daily rituals that had evolved naturally as the community learned to blend their traditions. "Hard to believe it's only been 6 months, Jake said. "Sometimes big changes happen quickly when they are meant to happen," Lyra replied. "You gave us more than sanctuary. You gave us hope that different people can choose to be family." The sanctuary world experiment had exceeded everyone's expectations. New Terra now housed over 800 residents from 23 different species. More importantly, it had inspired similar sanctuary projects on 12 other worlds. The network of protected colonies was growing faster than anyone had anticipated. The slavers had tried twice more to attack New Terra, but each assault had been defeated by increasingly sophisticated defenses and coordinated military support. The sanctuary world now hosted a permanent joint military base staffed by officers from multiple governments. "Dad, are you coming to the ceremony?" Nira called from below, using the human word she had learned to use for Jake. The adoption ceremony was scheduled for that afternoon. Jake had been putting it off for months, not because he doubted his commitment to the children, but because he wanted to make sure he understood what it meant in both human and Zephyrian cultures. "Nervous?" Lyra asked, sensing his emotional state. "A little," Jake admitted. "I've been their father in practice for months, but making it official feels different. In Zephyrian culture, adoption means the adult takes responsibility for the child's heart growth as well as their safety," Lyra explained. "You have already done this. The ceremony just lets everyone else know." The adoption ceremony was held in the main community hall, with representatives from multiple species serving as witnesses. Captain Rodriguez, now permanently stationed at New Terra, officiated the human portion of the ceremony. Elder Thorne, a Zephyrian leader who had arrived 2 months earlier, handled the traditional empathic bonding ritual. "Jake Morrison," Captain Rodriguez said formally, Do you accept full responsibility for the welfare, education, and protection of Kale and Nira, formerly of the planet Zephyr Prime? I do, Jake replied, his voice steady and clear. Elder Thorn stepped forward, his crystalline features glowing with soft inner light. Jake Morrison, he said in accented but fluent English, do you open your heart pattern to these children, to be their emotional anchor and guide through all phases of their growth? Jake felt a strange warmth as the elder's empathic abilities touched his mind gently, not intrusively but with permission. I do. The bonding ritual was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. For a moment he could feel Kyle and Nira's emotions directly, their love and trust and excitement. He could sense their memories of fear and loss, but also their hope for the future. Most powerfully, he could feel their absolute confidence that he would always be there for them. When the ceremony ended, Jake found himself surrounded by well-wishers from across the colony. Pete Johnson clapped him on the shoulder. Dr. Martinez gave him a hug. Even some of the newer refugees, people he barely knew, offered their congratulations. You have given us all an example of what family can mean, said Vex, a reptilian saurian, who had arrived just weeks earlier with his own children. On my world, we say that true strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That evening, Jake sat with his officially adopted family on the porch of their rebuilt home. The house was larger now, with rooms for visiting refugees and a workshop where Kyle could practice his engineering skills. What happens next? Kyle asked. Do we stay here forever? That depends, Jake said. What do you want to do with your lives? I want to build things, Kyle said immediately. Machines that help people, maybe ships that can carry refugees to safety. I want to help plants grow in new places, Nira added, so people don't go hungry when they have to leave their homes. Jake smiled. Both children had chosen goals that would help others just as they had been helped. Those sound like excellent plans. What about you, Jake? Lyra asked. What do you want to do? Jake considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, he had been a lonely man, growing vegetables and trying not to think about the past. Now he was the father of 2 alien children, the partner of a remarkable woman, and the unofficial coordinator of the galaxy's most successful refugee sanctuary program. I want to keep doing what we're doing here, he said finally, but bigger. I've been talking with Captain Rodriguez and some of the other colony leaders about creating a formal refugee protection organization. Like a military unit? Kyle asked, with interest. More like a humanitarian organization with military support, teams that can respond to slave raids, establish new sanctuaries, and help refugee families find permanent homes. Lyra nodded approvingly. You want to spread the new Terra model to other worlds? Exactly. We've proven that different species can work together when they choose to. Now we need to prove it can work on a larger scale. As they sat together watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Jake reflected on how completely his life had changed. The knock on his door during that storm had brought him not just 3 refugees seeking help, but a new understanding of what family could mean. A year ago, he had defined himself by his losses, his dead wife, his abandoned military career, his solitary existence. Now he defined himself by his choices, to protect, to nurture, to build something bigger than himself. Jake, Nira said sleepily from her position curled against his side. Will you tell us the story about the night we came here? It had become a bedtime tradition, the story of the stormy night when everything changed. Jake had told it so many times that it had taken on the quality of a legend. Once upon a time, Jake began, there was a man who lived alone and thought he liked it that way. Then one night, during the worst storm anyone could remember, 3 travelers appeared at his door. As he told the familiar story, Jake was aware of the larger community around them. In houses throughout the colony, other families were sharing their own bedtime rituals. Human parents were reading to alien children, while alien caregivers taught human youngsters traditional songs from distant worlds. The sanctuary world had become exactly what its name suggested, a safe place where anyone could find refuge and the chance to build a new life. But more than that, It had become proof that the universe was not as dark and dangerous as it sometimes seemed. There were people willing to fight for strangers. There were communities willing to welcome refugees. There were individuals ready to open their hearts and homes to those in need. As Nira fell asleep against his shoulder, and Kale nodded off in his chair, Jake realized that this was what victory looked like. Not the defeat of enemies or the accumulation of power, but the creation of family where none had existed before. The slavers were still out there somewhere, threatening other worlds and other families. But they would find that the galaxy had changed. Sanctuary worlds were spreading, military forces were coordinating better, and refugee families had places to run to when they needed help. Most importantly, they would find that some humans, when asked to choose between safety and doing what was right, would choose to do what was right every single time. Jake Morrison carried his sleeping children to their beds, kissed them goodnight, and prepared for another day of building the kind of galaxy where families like theirs could exist safely. It was, he thought, exactly the kind of future worth fighting for.